Hey you, do you like war paints? Well, I know that I sure do. Seriously, when are we actually gonna get new war paints? Not only am I a war paint enthusiast in general, but I also enjoy making my own war paint designs. And I figured the best way to demonstrate that passion is to show you some of the designs I've made this year. Now, I've done these showcase videos for the past couple of years, and I want to keep that tradition alive here in the Big 26. Like always, if you want to check out some more in-depth showcases of these war paints on the community workshop, or if you want to get started on making your own war paints but aren't too sure where or how to start, I'll have links to both resources in the description. Alright, let's get into the war paints I've made so far in 2026. Now, before we get into all these new skins, I first want to show off a couple of war paints that are remakes of ones I've made in the past, the first one being version 3 of the one I call Beachfront. It's basically a simple team-colored skin inspired by the color palette of 60s beach houses and overall beach environments. And while I still like the overall design of the previous version, something about the textures felt just a little bit off to me, like they were almost a bit over-detailed in some areas. So with the newest version I made this year, I toned back some of the details in the texture work while keeping the overall spirit of the war paint intact. And you know, this war paint may not be the most flashy, but it might be right up your alley if you're a fan of team-colored skins. Speaking of which, I'm honestly a huge sucker of the specific shades of red and blue that I used here, even though they aren't typically seen very often in the game. So at the very least, they can provide a different type of flair from the other team-colored war paints already in the game. And rounding off the very small list of Warpaint remakes is version 2 of this one called Tactical. It's a simple 2-texture Warpaint based on the colors of the upper hand, and also uses a Warpaint base that has exposed metal, leaving more parts of each weapon model mostly intact. Now, I really did like the previous version of this Warpaint, but I'll admit that, like Beachfront, its textures were just too detailed. And even though the shade of green I used was supposed to be nearly identical to that of the upper hand, it just didn't really work as well as I would have liked. So I toned back the details on the main texture and changed the shade of green to be a bit darker and more saturated, and because of those two changes, this is now one of my favorite war paints I've made, even if it's a bit simple overall. It's honestly such a shame that we don't have more green war paints in the game, since it's both a pretty underrated and underutilized color for weapon skins, and that's why I think this war paint would be the perfect skin to slot right in the small niche of green war paints. And if you're a fellow green war paint fan or military loadout enthusiast, this war paint might just be perfect for you. Alright, time for the completely brand new war paints. Similar to the one I just showed, this next one is also based on the color palette of a weapon in the game, this time being the Dragon's Fury, and I fittingly named this war paint Furious Finish. While I am proud of the war paint's design, I will admit that there's nothing overly crazy to see here, just another team-colored war paint that I believe would fit in quite nicely with the other ones already in the game. But despite the simplicity of this skin, there's also a subtle albedo shine on the primary colored textures to help this war paint really pop. Looking back on this war paint, it is a bit ironic that I based an entire war paint on the one weapon in the game that only has one war paint it can use. Regardless, the Dragon's Fury is my favorite pyro weapon in the game, and I deemed it fitting to make a weapon skin in its completely deserved honor. And you know what? This is my video. I'm gonna give the Dragon's Fury a shout out. It's such a fun weapon, and you should really give the thing a try if you haven't already. Like, it genuinely makes pyro so much more fun to play in my opinion. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Okay, taking a step away from war paints designed after weapons, we've got a war paint based on a map instead. I call this skin here Badlands Boogie, and as the name totally gives away, it's based on the map Badlands. The main texture is based on those typical groovy patterns seen throughout the 60s and 70s, and the team colors are based on the environments of Badlands, with red team's colors being based on the terrain of the map, while blue's colors come from the map's skybox. I was really trying to go for a war paint look reminiscent of the old weapon skins we got years ago, especially something like the Sandstone Special Pistol, where the main theme is desaturated terrain, and I'm honestly really happy with how it turned out. I think the colors fit in especially well with the game's backgrounds, and it gives your loadout that extra bit of flair without completely being the center of attention. Now, even though we still have 2 more war paints to get through, I think this is my favorite one I'm showcasing today. The way the colors and patterns look on each weapon model is really satisfying to me, and the fact that it's flashy but not over the top distracting makes it a unique team-colored war paint not quite like anything in the game already. Up next is a very simple team-colored war paint that I call Faded Flair, and apart from the tactical war paint earlier, this is by far the most straightforward and basic war paint in today's showcase. And while it may not be incredibly flashy, I think its simple desaturated team colors and lighter wood accents helps give your weapons a tiny splash of color while keeping the stock look of your weapon thanks to the exposed metal from the war paint base. I think this war paint more than any other on today's list reminds me of the old Craftsman and Two Fort collections, where each were comprised mainly of simple yet really charming team-colored skins that you could actually see the mercenaries using on the battlefield. And really, that was the main goal I was going for with this war paint, and for fans of the older skin collections, I think it would be perfect for them. It's subtle enough to mesh in with your loadout, but it stands on its own in terms of bringing your gun to life. And last but definitely not least, we have the Brew Blasted War Paint, which was also my official entry in the Americana War Paint contest held by the Painter's Workshop. The main inspiration for this came from 50s and 60s coffee shops, since nothing screams Americana like a good old cup of joe. Now, while I definitely didn't place very high in the contest overall, I'm still happy with how the war paint itself turned out. The contrasting off-white and dark coffee marble patterns help this war paint really pop, while the wood and green accents help tie the whole skin together. I'm honestly super proud of this war paint and would say it's easily one of my favorites I've made this year, not to mention how fun it was to create something for a contest. Speaking of which, I want to give a shout out to the other talented creators who contributed items for this past war paint contest, because there were a ton of excellent submissions. I'll put the link to the contest collection in the description if you want to check out some other amazing Americana themed war paints and weapon skins. And there we have it, all of the war paints I've made so far this year. I'll definitely be making more when I have the time and inspiration, but I hope you enjoyed this small showcase of the designs I've come up with so far. Again, if you have any thoughts or any criticisms on these war paints, let me know in the comments. And feel free to check out the tutorials in the description if you want to get into war paint creation yourself. Anyway, that's all I've got for today, so thank you all for watching, I hope you have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next video.